Hey everybody, this is Seth with SethPerla.com, and I'm here today to talk to you about one of the best tips that I can possibly give you in terms of helping a struggling student turn around. So whether you're a student who is struggling in school and you're like, man, I don't know why I can't get better grades, I don't know why I keep forgetting things and misplacing things, and or whether you're a parent who has a student struggling, or whether you're even a teacher and you really want to help your kids out with some things, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the backpack overhaul, how I do it, exactly how I do it with students, and why it's so important and why it makes such a big difference. So first of all, I'm going to start with this. My students that I work with, I tend to get very right-brained learners, okay? And one of the big difference between right brain and left brain learners, and of course I'm generalizing here, but a general difference between right and left brain learners, or linear sequential versus more random global thinkers, or you could say disorganized versus disorganized students, is that they tend to process the world differently. So you have your random thinkers, your disorganized students, who tend to be very global, big picture thinkers, and they tend to be what I call overhaulers, okay? And left brain thinkers tend to be what I call maintainers. Now, the difference is that a maintainer is good, naturally good at maintaining things, at maintaining systems. For example, if when it comes to cleaning their bedrooms or brushing teeth or things like that, they tend to remember these systems and they tend to execute these systems with their executive function in the prefrontal cortex of the brain, and they're able to execute these things. Your overhaulers tend to not be good at maintenance, okay? They tend to forget things a lot. They tend to have trouble developing habits unless the habit is something that's important to them. So if it is a habit that has to do with, let's say, homework or making the bed or cleaning bedrooms or brushing teeth or something like that, it tends to be much more difficult for them to turn it into a habit if they're an overhauler. One thing overhaulers are really good at, though, is overhauling. Periodically, they'll go ahead and overhaul their entire bedroom, or their backpack, or the place, whatever their particular hobby is. They'll totally overhaul that whole system. So they periodically will overhaul. Well, the problem is that when it comes to schoolwork and everything has a date, you know, a due date to it, a deadline, and they're good at overhauling and not good at maintaining, they tend to miss a lot of deadlines, be very unrealistic about time, about how long it's going to take to do something. They tend to get behind. They find themselves swimming upstream for half the semester, just trying to pull themselves out of DNF territory just to make it, creating a lot more stress for themselves because they don't maintain very well. Here's why the backpack overhaul is so powerful. So here's what I do. The backpack overhaul allows them to have a regular time when they know that they're going to be overhauling everything. And once they do this the first time, it becomes very easy to do it subsequent times. So the first time will take about an hour or so. So you need to really devote a good amount of time to doing this. After that, it's about 15 minutes a week. I recommend doing it on a Sunday night, because Sunday night is kind of a dead time when you can prep for the upcoming week and tie up loose ends from the previous week. So that's the way my brain looks at it. But do whatever works for you, of course. So here's what I do. Let's say I'm working with a brand new student. So every time I start with a new student, one of the first things I do is the backpack overhaul. So let's say I'm working with a brand new student. It's one of our first sessions. I will tell them, all right, go ahead and bring everything home from school. If you have a locker, bring home everything from the locker, every gum wrapper, every book, every paper, every single thing from the locker, clothing, anything you have. Even sometimes they'll come back and there will be food that's been sitting in there for 4 months. I don't care. Get everything out of the locker, bring it back. If you have to put it in a big black plastic bag to get it back, I don't do that. Doesn't matter. Just bring everything. If they have a desk, I tell them to bring everything from inside the desk if they have that type of desk. Either way, I want everything that they have so that we can do a reset. Just like a computer or a cell phone reset, that's what we're going to do with their stuff. So they bring everything. And what we do is we start with a big open space. Now, in my office, I have a couple of big desks that are pushed together, big tables. But you can also do this on the floor in the living room or some big space. And what you want to do is you want to have a recycling can, a trash can, and a box labeled archive. And that can be a relatively small box, but a box enough to keep papers in. So then what we do is we get everything out of every single pocket of the backpack. Every gum wrapper, every pencil lead, every little thing out of the backpack. Get it all out, get it onto the floor, shake the backpack out, get all the rest of the crumbs and stuff out, bring it back, and then we start going through everything and segmenting it into piles. So if they don't need it, we put it into recycling. If they need it, we put it in the pile for what class it is. So there's a math pile, a science pile, a history pile, etc. If it's a supply, we put it in the supply pile. And if it's something more important like a wallet, an ID, money, a cell phone, or an iPad or something, we put that in another pile, or a cable that goes to those things. So these are kind of the categories that I tend to see coming out of backpacks. If there's a lunchbox in the backpack, we pull that out, look at what's in there, get rid of what we can. So we just start going through it. And we start these piles. And we go through every single piece of paper and every single everything and get it into a category. Now, I have two types of kids, subcategories, and some of them are attached to their papers and some are not. So you have to look at each student differently. Some of them are willing to throw things away too easily, and they'll often throw things away that shouldn't be thrown away. And some are not willing to throw things away because they have internal stress that if they get rid of something that's important, that they will get in trouble from the teacher. So I have sort of both ends of the spectrum. But we want to find a balance, and what we want to do is we want to get rid of every single thing that they do not need in their life. There's no reason for them to keep a lot of the stuff that they're given. So as we're pulling stuff out, I ask students questions like, do you need this? Why do you need this? Why isn't your name on it? Let's get your name on it. And I'm not saying that in an accusatory way. I want them to notice if there is a pattern with not having their name on it, then we're going to get their name on everything. But we're going to really look at things and really examine them and say, why are you keeping this? Okay, what should we do with it? If you are keeping it, and if you're not keeping it, where should we put it? Now, if they don't need it in the backpack, but it's either sentimental or it's something that they may need someday, that goes in the archive. If they don't need it, recycle it. If they do need it, put it in the appropriate folder, unless it's something that must be turned in which case, put it in the queue or label it. I have a video called The Queue, that's Queuue, and if it hasn't been turned in, it's got to get in. That's a top priority to get anything in that's unfinished. Even if it's not done, just get it in. Get it out of your hands, be done with it, because a lot of times these kids really do work very hard and do want it to be really high quality and won't turn things into their own detriment when it's not done to their liking, and they'll even sometimes be 90 or 95% finished and won't turn it in. And they need to get in the habit of at least getting it in, then we can worry about doing more quality or finishing, but like they need that habit of getting it in, because the 0 is much worse than even a 50% F, let's say. So that's an important habit. So after we've gone through everything, we've got it in the right piles, then we get things organized from folder to folder. So I ask them, what order do you want this in? Sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't, but I am always asking these questions to see what do you want to do. I want them to raise their metacognition. I want them to understand their style, how their brain works, how they organize, and I want to force them to articulate why they're making the choices they do. And this helps them be more conscious and more aware and more mindful of the choices that they're choosing, so that they can implement better systems in time. Now, what's going to happen? They're going to get everything organized. Everything's all done, looks great, everything is in a place, they have a home for everything. Well, 3 days later, it's going to be a mess again, or 5 days later. So even when I start working with students, inevitably, most of them, 1 week later, I do an overhaul with them again. It's much easier because we've just reset everything, so it's a much smaller overhaul that only takes a few minutes. But inevitably, almost all of them still have stuff out of place. So we just went over this last week and there's still stuff out of place. That is normal. They haven't integrated the system. If you're the student, it's going to take time for the neurons in your brain to connect to really say, oh, this is my system. So be patient. Like, it's just going to take time to get these systems down. But the following week, things will be out of place. We'll pull everything out, get things in the right place, get the things that are urgent into the queue or labeled, and get it back in the backpack. and so on and so forth. A week after, we're going to do the same thing. Inevitably, I'm going to find that there are some papers not in the right place, and we get them back. And I want them to be taking the ownership of this as much as possible, because they are the ones who need the skill. And what happens is that you can tell within usually about 6 weeks that these students the systems are starting to click, and they're feeling more successful, and they're able to get things in better. They're able to stay more on top of their homework. They know what's in there. They know how to maintain their system better. And this is just because once a week for 15 minutes we've done this overhaul. So really want to encourage you to take the time to do that. I hope you're doing awesome, and I will see you next week. Take care.